Hello again, I'm Tripp Rogers, and this is Tripp's Take. I got an interesting email the other day. Jerry Del Coliano is a radio friend of mine, and he grew up, was in New Jersey, program director for a number of years, and he sends out these things, and I've talked about them on the air, day starters, which you can get from Jerry. It's great stuff, and it's stuff that makes you think. He talks about teaching a class, and the one he sent the other day was Lonely in a Crowd. Now, one of my favorite songs by Barry Manilow, believe it or not, is a song called Lonely Together. And this is one of the songs he did in the 1980s. And basically it talks about, wouldn't you mind being lonely together? Well, this is interesting that this plays all of it. Since COVID, we all seem a little lonelier. 40% of British adults have gone 3 days without face-to-face conversation with another person. 28% said they were lonely around people at social event or at work. It's worse for 18 to 24-year-olds. That's 60%. Now, focus on how many other people feel the same loneliness and redirect your efforts at them. Sometimes someone has to go first, and it might as well be you, and it can make all of the difference. And I think that's an interesting concept. It's interesting because it also plays off. I belong to Compassion Christian Church in Savannah. I attend that regularly with my fiance, Sandy. And they do a series over the summer, about 4 or 5 weeks, called At the Movies. And basically they take movies and, explain them in terms of the Bible. And there are lessons to be learned. And this week's movie was It's a Wonderful Life. Now, if you're familiar with that, that is a Frank Capra classic starring Jimmy Stewart, Donna Reed from 1946. And it's about a man who felt he had wasted his life. And an angel shows him how much or what would have happened had he not lived. And he realized the value that he has for people. And I think it's just kind of funny that these two messages coalesced with each other over the course of the past week, because I understand it. There are people who feel lonely, and COVID has made people feel more isolated. I mean, listen, one of the reasons I started Tripp's Take, believe it or not, was because, it was in the midst of COVID. I wasn't doing a radio show, and I wanted a way to get my opinions out. And so Tripp's Take was born. And now that we're into our 4th year of it, we've done three years of it. We're now into our 4th year. It is kind of interesting, although sometimes I have to really think hard about what I was going to talk about, because there's not a whole lot to talk about sometimes, but I always seem to find something. But again, this is my way of reaching out to you, and this video podcast, if you watch it on video, you're able to see me and see my expressions and stuff like that. Although I will admit I'm not, the greatest to look at, but then you can see my collections and my stuff that I have in my background here in my studio. You can't see the slot car set because I haven't moved the microphone or moved the camera. I don't move the camera at all. I just kind of have it sitting there. But I mean, that was a way for me to get over my loneliness and my, isolation, I guess, good way to put it, for radio. So that's why I started this. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting when you think about all that stuff. But as I say, I always find things to talk about. And something I want to talk about, we just had the Major League All-Star Game. Now, if you're a baseball fan, and you're like me, I grew up a baseball fan. By the way, I don't know if I've mentioned it. I'm reading a great book, Baseball in the 60s. It's written by someone who I went to college with, Doug Kirkle, and it is a fascinating book because all the names he mentions, I remember from baseball cards in the 60s. And baseball in the 60s, it was far different, so I recommend it. But I remember the All-Star Game. I remember watching the All-Star Game because it was the only time you could see a lot of these great players play. And I remember those games. The National League always won. The American League didn't win. And it bothered me because I was an American League fan. But the thing about the All-Star Game now is I really think, back in the day, players wore their team's uniforms. And I thought that was the cool thing about the All-Star game. So you had 3 9s on there. Who cares? They're all different uniforms. And I think that's what baseball is about. And I think they're losing touch with that because they're all wearing these uniforms. I know it's a marketing move. I get it. But I think it's so cool if they have their own uniforms. Aaron Judge is a Yankee. I mean, that's what made it so great with the All-Star game. They were all playing on the same team, National League and American League. I don't know. I just think in this day of marketing, this is just another marketing tool. It's another way to market. I mean, those City Connect uniforms in baseball, are they ridiculous? And it almost seems as if baseball is struggling to try and become relevant. And I think that's one of the problems because truthfully, you just heard the NBA getting this huge television contract. I don't understand why, but okay, if people want to pay it, they're going to pay it. I just kind of wonder if baseball, and you hear about the millions NFL teams make, and the NFL makes, that's no doubt. Baseball, it just seems has been lost on the wayside. And it's not like the days when I was growing up. I mean, I realize media has changed. Every game is televised now. I understand that. But, I think some of the loss of that, national game of the week type of thing, the bigness, and again, baseball's World Series, nobody cares. And I mean, there are baseball fans, but they're a dying breed. They've already lost a generation because they play the games at night and they start the games so late. I mean, there is no reason why the All-Star game can't start at 7 o'clock at night. That way you get most of the game, you get the game over probably with 10 o'clock. I mean, seriously. But no, we have to have it on for the West Coast audience. So it's got to start at 8 o'clock. And even then, we get started at 8. It's got to start at 8:15 because the West Coast people are being left out. Really? Really? You're in the summer. People are off. I mean, the All-Star game used to be appointment television. Of course, the year they tied, that was ridiculous. And my buddies and I who would get together every year to watch the All-Star game just got so disgusted that year. I remember that. And we were just looking at each other. We said, are you kidding me? And come to think of it, that was one of the last times I think we got together for the All-Star game. We were so disappointed. We're old school baseball fans. We love the All-Star game, what it meant. I don't know. I think it's kind of lost on today's generation. But again, part of it is the way the game has changed. And I understand, there were some people you wanted to see in the All-Star game, but with every game on television, there's a good chance you can catch them, especially if you have the MLB package and you can watch any game you want to. I mean, again, that's one of the things that I just kind of think about and I kind of wonder about. Has baseball lost that generation because of those late starts? And, the World Series games start so late. We have to get the West Coast audience in. And playoff games start really late. We have to get the West Coast audience taken care of. I don't know. I think I get it. I understand it. But I think sometimes they do things and it doesn't work well. I think football has learned the lesson because they used to start the Monday night games at 9 o'clock. And now they start them at 8. And I think the primetime games start 8:15, 8:20. I mean, again, most of the time they get over with by 11, 11:30. And that's more palatable than after midnight, close to 1 o'clock in the morning, like some of the games used to go. And that is Tripp's Take for July the 18th. Yeah. Okay, we're moving along, 2024. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to email trippstake@gmail.com. Fantasy football season is upon us. We have training camps starting very shortly, or has already started for a lot of the teams. Be on the lookout for our other podcast, The Fantasy Sultans, with the Hall of Famer Mike Sheck. You can find it on Spotify for podcasters and YouTube. Just search for the Fantasy Sultans. If you like the music of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, give a listen to my internet radio station, WTRSradio.com. Join me again next week. For now, I'm Tripp Rogers. Thank you for joining me. Let's make it a great one.